Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Kaylinn. Thanks for agreeing to share a little bit about your coaching experience. I'll just ask you some questions about kind of what it was like before and how things have evolved. And of course, we're all still working on ourselves. And, there's no finish line here, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what impact coaching had and what changes you are, giving yourself credit for.
I like that.
So, if it's okay with you, I'll just jump right in.
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. So, one of the things that we talked a lot about was you communicating your needs more and sort of taking your power back type of thing.
Yeah.
So, could you just summarize, what was going on before you started coaching and what evolved?
Well, so I think one of the reasons that came up is because I was transitioning from a assisting role to a leadership role, and it was like switching my mindset from the one to the other. And so it was really getting comfortable with my preference being the one to push forward. So yeah, that was a practice that that has helped me, like when I'm on set and all eyes are on me, that I can be like, okay, this is what I want to try, and it not having to be the perfect response, or even that it's the last one we try, but it at least keeps us moving, and it lets me take that power role.
Nice. What do you feel like? What sort of impact did that have on your views about leadership?
uh, that it's a process, that leadership is definitely a process, but I think for that it helped me, hmm, I just ask me that again.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and I'll just like make an edit. It's no problem. Um, so how would you say the communication stuff that you worked on, um, how did that impact your view on leadership? In other words, like, what were your views on leadership before and after?
My ideas on leadership was that I immediately had to start with the right answer, and instead of it just being that I was guiding the crew, guiding my team. And so by being the leader, it doesn't mean that it's only my idea, but it's like I'm the one guiding the ship. So it helped me trust my team where I needed to, but also to being able to take control and, yeah, and guide the job when I needed to.
Nice. Yeah, so that's interesting. It's like, I think there are these kind of old school misconceptions that like the leader knows everything and is like this authoritarian boss.
Yeah, and it's kind of goes into the stories that we've told ourselves about what each position or job is going to look like. And then when we get into them, being like, oh, this isn't what I imagined. And it just takes a second to kind of, I don't know, reframe that and understand that just because it's not what it looked like doesn't, that's like a bad thing, that it's just our imagination is really bad at imagining things.
It kind of reminds me of another sort of theme that we touched on a lot, which was um, that imagination, the playfulness, the kind of curiosity. And could you, if it's okay with you, could you talk about like where you were at with that before you started coaching, and what did you recognize about the importance of playfulness for you, and how you ended up bringing that into your life more?
Well, so I had spent so many years in this industry in one role that I had developed these ideas of how it should look. So I created these really stringent like boundaries, and especially in a creative field, it didn't aid me at all. So that was my favorite session of ours, because it was like a willingness to play and experiment, and it reawakened some of that creative tendency. I had gotten so strict in my mindset that I had forgotten that the whole reason I'm in a creative industry is to create and play and be curious. And that one really helped me a lot. And it's one that, like, openness to play, you would think would be kind of no a throwaway, but it was like it really impacted me on so many different levels.
So, and just to clarify, like, um, the coaching process, and just so so other people can understand, it's not like I said, okay, hey, today we're gonna, talk about faithfulness because I think that's important, right? Like, could you sort of say, from your perspective, like what it was like to have a session and how we even arrived at this idea of playfulness to begin with?
Well, so every session I would come in with something I wanted to talk about. And like then at the after we talked about it, and I think it was that I was feeling really restrained in these boundaries my mind had created, that this was my career path, this was the direction it should go. And I felt restricted in those boundaries. And so where it ended up was like recapturing the ferocity of my childhood, and then it kind of morphed to an openness to play. And that actually helped me open up a project that I had done for just a personal project. And then all of a sudden it became something I did to make money, and people were really receptive to it.
I remember that. It was very exciting. And uh, I remember during a session, you reported that you were sold out, that you actually filled all your event slots for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And then I'm going into doing a round 2 of that. So
That's awesome. It's called Velveteen Rabbit. I hope it's okay for me to plug it.
yeah, well, now it's Most Love.
Uh,
It's Most Love inspired by the Velveteen Rabbit, but
Most loved. Okay. And
yeah,
it's like portraits of people with their like first stuffed animal. Is that what it is?
they're lovies.
They're yeah.
Yeah. This time, that session, I had a kid bring in a sponge with an octopus. That was his lovey. It's great.
Um, okay. So another section, another sort of theme that came up a lot was around communication, around like expectations that you had about what a conversation should look like or what a relationship should look like. And you talked about this tendency that you had about oversharing, about like the boundaries going out the window. And at the time that was something that you weren't too happy about. So in your words, could you tell me a little bit about what happened before and how that evolved?
Yeah. I remember laziness being one of the things we talked about in that realm, and it was that it was like a shortcut to intimacy. So instead of creating the work we have to do for any sort of relationship, whether it's business or personal, it was like a shortcut I did. And it was kind of just recognizing that, and then working on, like, it's in this theme, creating boundaries.
Mm-hmm. And you use the word laziness. So at the time, you felt like it was a lazy approach or something?
Yeah, I felt like it was a shortcut, that instead of being curious and really trying to connect with someone and understand where they were coming from and communicating, that it felt like, to me, it was like a shortcut. And
Mm.
so I would overshare, and by recognizing really what I wanted to create and being more thoughtful about creating those authentic conversations.
Um, how has that evolved for you, do you think?
Well, I'm being more mindful about it, and I'm also, it's like I said, of it being a about boundaries, like, one, what kind of scenario am I in? If I'm in a business scenario, like, oversharing is probably not the tactic to take. But if I'm in a personal relationship, I want, it's probably not oversharing. So also recognizing what kind of scenario I'm in.
Right. So just being more aware of, um, kind of mindful and asking yourself the questions of what kind of conversation is this? You know, is it appropriate to share this or that?
The separation of business Kaylin and personal Kaylin.
Okay, yeah, good pivot there.
Yeah.
That was another big thing, business Kaylin and personal Kaylin. Are there any sort of takeaways that you got from the coaching process in terms of, who is business Kaylin, who's personal Kaylin?
Well, and as a creative, we get really wrapped up in our work, and it's sometimes hard to see our value outside of what we are creating. And this helped me, our conversations and and your coaching helped me see that, like, photography is what I create because of who I am, not the reverse. Like, photography is the tool and I'm the individual, so I'm the value. So that really helped me separate from Kaylin Gilstrap photography.
Um, what else am I missing? I know that we talked about a lot of stuff. Is there anything about like your sort of family, that you felt like, came out that was useful to you?
So everybody in a family has a role, and I have been referred to as glue in my family, and that is, it's a very, I know it is said in a very kind way, but it also created a lot of pressure, and it also didn't, it wasn't empowering for the rest of the family, because I'm not the most important person in the family. I'm one person in the family. And so it also didn't help me trust the other team players. So that, kind of breaking that down and talking about it, really helped me change my mindset on, instead of taking on this role that I was the only one that could create and help my family, it just helped me expand my mindset on that.
Um, Part of the connective tissue for a lot of these things was vulnerability, and just sort of putting yourself out there. I wonder if there's anything you could share about your views on vulnerability and how they changed.
Oh, um, well, and it's interesting that you bring that up after, so, because it almost seems like conflicting, like I'm oversharing and then I'm also
Hmm.
trying to be vulnerable. But that's like, when you're oversharing, you're not necessarily being vulnerable. And so,
Okay.
yeah, and I think those were spaced further apart than you would think they would be. But I mean, session wise. But for me, vulnerability, especially when I was talking about my work, because a lot of it deals with family. And so I would choose to be funny instead of answering a question authentically. And so now, instead of depending on humor to kind of like, you know, hide behind, I've actually started to think and respond in a way of like, this is really what that's about. And that, especially as a creative, is, I think, an essential tool, is to learn how to be vulnerable.
One thing that I just remembered looking at the notes is the Hulk, um, which is a term that you used early on. Could you give us the quick story about the Hulk?
The Hulk. So I had developed this belief that I am bad at math, whether that is true or not. Numbers, accounting, taxes really, really stressed me out. And so I would refer to the meltdown that would happen. And I think with that one is I bought the wrong QuickBooks, and then trying to figure that out, it just created a meltdown. And so we talked about like my physical reactions during that time, like getting tunnel vision, my heart racing. And so I was getting all these physical cues. But instead of like doing anything with those physical cues at that time, I was just staying in that place, trying to like power through until like then I had an emotional break. And so I haven't had the Hulk visit very much, because we actually worked on like, okay, if you're getting all these physical cues, your heart racing, you're getting tunnel vision, like if your heart's racing, why don't we do an activity that actually makes sense for your heart to be up? And so I would go out for a run, or even doing a handstand to change perspective. I think that was one.
Right.
But it helped me keep the Hulk away.
Completing the stress cycle, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
processing stress.
yeah, that was super helpful.
Yeah, I mean the Hulk. We all have the Hulk in there somewhere. It's a matter of having the relationship with the Hulk that we want.
Yeah, become
Forget which
friends with the Hulk.
forget which of the Marvel movies like now like he's friends with the Hulk and the Hulk can like, think clearly.
Oh, I
And the
don't.
Hulk, maybe it's the end of spoiler alert, maybe it's the end of the Avengers where like now the Hulk is this really smart Hulk.
Oh, see, yeah, like whenever I envision the Hulk, I still envision like the comic book Hulk, not Mark Ruffalo. Ruffalo?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, at the end of the Avengers, he's the Hulk, but he's like very sophisticated. So he's not
Oh,
like freaking out. He's just like very huge and strong, but he's a scientist.
oh, I really like that. I really like the idea of doing my taxes as the Hulk, but like just as a power play, like a big, huge, sophisticated green man.
Right. Okay.
That's a different session.
Right, right. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Um, so any other sort of key takeaways or anything like that that I missed or that you wanted to mention?
One thing that still has been impactful for me is, and I even remember I came into a meeting and was really unfocused, and you at one point you just simply said, humans aren't meant to multitask. And that was like mind blowing for me, because our society is so like focused on like, oh no, you do six things at once. And by working through that with you, of like taking away like numerous tabs and like overwhelming myself, I was lowering my stress level. It's stuff that simplifying my life has been really, really helpful.
Right. And I remember talking about that with you. And what would you say is the result of that? I mean, how has that shown up in practical terms?
Well, in somewhat like well, not somewhat, I check my email less frequently instead of it being, we just get into these habits and ruts that it's like we're not even thinking about it. We're just doing and doing and doing. And so by kind of being more thoughtful about how I'm setting up my environment, it's like it's more healthy. I'm more focused on the tasks at hand, and I'm not stressing myself out. So
I thought of one other thing. The like giving yourself time thing. I know that, I think that's related to the communication, oversharing, vulnerability, etc. But I noticed that even when I asked you to do this interview, you said, let me think about it. Like, I need time to answer that question. It wasn't a yes or no. It was like just a pause.
yeah.
And I was like, this is awesome. So uh, would you contrast, before and after in those terms?
Really, Danny, I just wanted you to know that I was still doing things we had.
You just wanted to prove it?
Yeah, no, the taking time to think. I had gotten into the habit of, or I believed that you had to respond quickly, that meant you were super intelligent if you responded quickly. But then I wasn't giving really concise answers, and I would have to often like come back. And so now I just immediately take that time to think. And by the time I respond, I am setting better parameters, I'm giving better information, and then I feel really confident about the answer I've given you. So that's helped a lot. That's beneficial not only to me, but it's beneficial to who I'm communicating with.
Clients also, I'm guessing.
Yes, because right off the get-go, they get a more prepared and thought out email rather than two or three off the hip.
I got to do a workshop about multitasking because it comes up so often with so many people, and it's such like a symptom of our society right now.
Yeah.
I'm kind of tempted to like go to my phone right now and like open 12 apps. They're like calling my attention.
I actually had someone talk to me about it recently, that they have like a kind of a self-help conversation every week, and that they just couldn't do it on Instagram Live because they had to multitask while they were doing it. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah, and Instagram is like alerts and comments, and yeah,
In your face.
it's brutal. Okay, well, is there anything else that I missed? Did we cover it
I'm sure
without recapping all of our sessions?
Yeah, I'm sure there is, but I think that's the stuff that really sticks out for me.
Okay, cool. And yeah, is there anything that like you would, if somebody is thinking about coaching or has never heard of coaching, or anything that you would want to inform or share with anybody about what it is, the process, etc.?
So for me, I followed you for probably 6 months to 9 months before I even contacted you. And that helped me. That's like, that's such a wonderful tool even before you go into coaching, is to, I was getting your emails and I was seeing your Instagram posts, and everything that you were putting out there was really, really hit home with you, with really hit home with me. So not only did it open me up, because this was actually my first coaching session or my coaching experience. So not only did it open me up to the idea of coaching, I felt really sure that you were the one I wanted to move forward with. And that was empowering to begin with. Like, I was very confident with the person that I was moving forward with.
Terrific. I'm glad to hear that. All right, I need to go multitask now and make some more emails and Instagram posts.
You like that Cookie Monster meme?
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
That's actually not a bad idea as like a way to express that, like as a meme or something.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I love that meme.
Yeah, I'll give you credit.
Great.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Kaylin. I appreciate you, being vulnerable, talking about all this, sharing your thoughts and helping others to wrap their head around what all this stuff is about.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
absolutely. Thank you.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.
All right.